All right, it is 6:31. I'm call this meeting to order of the Champaign County Board Committee of the Whole. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Carter,
Here.
Cowart, Esri,
Here.
Fortato,
Here.
Goss, Hanauer Friedman,
Here.
Harper, Ingram,
Here.
Locke,
Here.
Lokshin,
Here.
Michaels,
Present.
Rodriguez,
Here.
Rogers, Sexton, Storr,
Present.
Straub,
Here.
Taylor,
Here.
Thorsland,
Here.
Vanich Theranon, Williams, Wilson,
Here.
Patterson.
Here. Next, we have approval of the agenda. Straub,
So moved.
Esri. All right, any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, next we have approval of the minutes from November 9th, 2022, the regular meeting.
So moved, Ingram.
All right, Ingram, Carter. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, is there anybody who'd like to participate in public participation? All right, moving on, any communications? All right.
The Martin Luther King celebration is going to be this Sunday. It'll be at the Cranach Center for the Performing Arts, and the time will be 4 p.m.
All right, thank you for that. Any other communications? All right, finance.
First up, we have Budget Amendment BUA 2022-12-224, Fund 1080, General Corporate Department 026 Treasurer, increased appropriations $1,355, increased revenue $0. Reason, additional funds required to cover shortage in full-time employee line and to cover the increase for the treasurer's salary that was approved in resolution on May 19th, 2022. In short, when we increased her salary, we didn't do the math, and we didn't have enough money to pay that last payroll. Do I have a motion? Samantha, second. Leah, second. Any discussion? Yes.
Real quick, that's all adjusted from here out? Everything's good
Yeah,
going forward? Because this was from May.
This is for 2022. We budgeted properly in 2023, is my understanding. So
Okay.
we budgeted it properly, we just didn't quite do the math.
And this was only for the last payroll. She isn't due from May through December,
No.
correct? Okay.
It's from when we voted in May for it to go into effect, and we had enough money to cover it until we didn't
Okay.
anymore.
Great,
Right?
thank you.
Okay. Probably we should do that math. Probably we should have done those two votes together, but, you know. Okay, no, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Next up, Budget Amendment BUA 2022-12-362, Fund 1080, General Corporate Department 031, Circuit Court, increased appropriations $2,600, increased revenue $0. Amendment for increased appropriations is requested to cover increases in personnel expenditures associated with staff turnover. Do I have a motion? Jen Straub, do I have a second? Jenny Lokshin. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Budget Amendment BUA 2022-12-632, Fund 2092 Law Library Department 074 Law Library, increased appropriations 2,500, increased revenue 2,500. Reason, one vendor has significantly increased their fees for 2022, causing a shortage in the books, periodicals, and manuals line. The memo also indicates that they've received more than $10,000 in additional revenue for fees for people using the service, and that more than covers this additional fee. Do I have a motion? Ms. Michaels and Ms. Cord for Lorraine for the second. Discussion? Yes, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. Just a simple question. Was this a surprise or couldn't plan ahead that the price of fee would increase? And is that accounted for going forward?
Ms. Hansen's not here to speak to this, but it's my understanding that the increase in the periodical, the book that was the published book, was significantly more than they had anticipated. I can't speak specifically to what the 2023 budget is. I don't have that in front of me. So I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question.
Oh, it just seemed in this case, right, you're required to have a hard copy.
Yeah, so if, for those of us who were here last year, will remember that we voted to pretty significantly reduce this line because they decided to go to online services, which in general were cheaper. But once they started making that transition, what they discovered is one of the journals or publications does not have that option. And so therefore, that cost reduction wasn't realized. And at the same time, the fee for that journal was higher than it had been in the past. So like, it was a double whammy.
Yeah, paper's more expensive now.
Yeah.
And I will also note, this is a special revenue fund under the court, not a general fund.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, I'm trying to remember to say opposed tonight. Budget Amendment BUA 2022-12740, Fund 1080, General Corporate Department 042 Coroner, increased appropriations 36,050, increased revenue 38,812, to cover increased autopsy and toxicology expenses incurred for death investigations surpassing the original 2020 fiscal year 2022 amounts. And I will also say again, the coroners received more than $96,000 in additional revenue from outside counties that will cover this expense.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Ingram. Do I have a second? Second, sorry, by Ms. Michaels. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Budget Amendment BUA 2022-12784, Fund 1080, General Corporate Department 041. And the person who's making this motion, we have another memo where we've gotten some more specific dollar amounts that are different than what was published in the agenda. So the a motion should be for $40,582 in appropriations and for $12,436 in increased revenue. So that's the motion, if you could please make it in that regards. $40,582 and $12,436. Increased appropriation required to cover 3 benefit time payouts and the match for COLA increase given to the state's attorney statewide, and then the additional revenue is for a partnership that we have with the U.S. Marshal Service funds that we've received. Do I have a motion?
So moved with the correction of the increased appropriations of $40,582 and the increased revenue of $12,436 as opposed to what was shown on the agenda, everything else to remain the same with the motion as presented, other than those numbers.
Mr. Thorslin is a second, and I believe Tammy might have a point of information.
Yes, the additional revenue should also include the state's COLA match, the $2,865 on the back of the memo.
Oh.
So I know the front, the memo's not very clear because it doesn't include that $2,865. But if you look at that credit total, it's 15,301. So
Sorry.
that's a little bit
I'll-
confusing.
Yeah, I'll change my motion then to $15,301 for the increased
Thank you.
revenue.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. I apologize. Mr. Thorson, will you take that amendment as a friendly amendment? Okay, other discussion. Thank you, Tammy. Diane?
I'm sorry, just a quick one here. It looks like we're moving money for benefits, for payout of benefits, and then we're receiving income for a MOU with the Department of Justice for operations. Are we kind of commingling this, or does it matter that one is for payroll and the other is for an operational fund? Maybe it just all lumps in the same fund, I don't know.
Go ahead. Are you talking about the regular FTE line, regular full-time employee line that says EE payouts and overtime U.S. Marshal? Is that what you're asking about? Okay, that includes both wages and overtime that was paid to an attorney. Let's see, the overtime amount that was paid to the attorney and reimbursed by the U.S. Marshal Program is $12,436. But there were also payouts. All of those expenses were paid out of that FTE line. For some reason, Kronos did not break out the overtime into the overtime line. So that's why we're asking for the reimbursement specifically to the full-time line.
Okay, so it all has to do with paying people, ultimately.
Correct.
Even including the income. The recipient of the income is to reimburse for paying of people.
Yeah, the federal other of $12,436 is reimbursement for the overtime costs.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that question. Any other questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Next up, budget transfer BUA 2022-12-585, Fund 1080, General Corporate Department 036, Public Defender, and 031 Circuit Court, amount $150,000. Reason to transfer unused personnel funds from the Public Defender's budget to defray the cost to the court's budget for compensating private counsel required to assist with the Public Defender's caseload. Do I have a motion? Mr. Ingram, do I have a second? Sorry, Jenny. Mike and Jenny, first and second. Discussion.
Can you specify which Jen?
Yeah. Look, sorry.
Just wanted to make sure I had it right.
Discussion? Seeing none. And I should mention that our public defender is here, but is on the agenda for later, so we will have an opportunity to meet. So if you don't have any questions now, maybe under Chris's portion, you might have a question. Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. The treasurer's reports through July are up on the website, and we have one of those resolutions about the mobile home tax certificate. And since we had a lot of questions about that last time, the treasurer is here to help us answer those questions. Do I have a motion? Diane, so moved. Jen Straub, second. This is going to be difficult. And if the treasurer could come up and maybe explain this to us. How this math works.
I have a question about the monthly report.
Since we have this on the floor, why don't we do that first, and then why don't we do this, because we're currently discussing this item for business, and then we'll circle back after we voted on it. We'll circle back to the monthly report.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Yeah, Mr.
Sure, so
Wilson,
what's the
I think you had
question?
the questions about this, so this
I
is.
do.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
No problem.
So this is similar to the previous tax sale certificate. And my question is, I'm trying to reconcile in my mind why the numbers aren't adding up. So in this case, there's a $5 delta, not much. Last time we met, there were a couple that were $150 off, It was just, I think only 1 out of the 10 actually matched. So why wouldn't the paper reflect where all the dollars are?
So for this particular certificate, there is a $5 disparity because there's been an increase in how much DMV charges for the transfer of titles. Between when this was submitted and now, I actually had a conversation with the executive about that disparity and why that $5 difference wasn't showing up. Corrected it with the trustee, so they actually are aware, the county tax agent, so they are aware that that is going to be corrected on future resolutions. This was the last one of, I would say, 7 or 8 that actually didn't reflect that DMV additional $5 cost. There was one that actually did have additional funds that had to be paid to the particular village that the mobile home was located in, and it was, I can't remember the exact amount, I'm like, but it was maybe a $68 or something like that. And that was, needed to be paid to the actual village because of some other anomaly that took place with the tax sale. If you guys want more additional details about that, I can ask the tax agent, get more clarity on exactly how that worked out. But again, the tax agent says this doesn't happen often, but every once in a while we'll have it where there is some special circumstance where we actually have to pay the village when we're doing that transfer of title.
So in this case, so going forward.
It's just a $5, the
Yes,
$5 disparity for the
$5.
DMV. Yep. And again, like, so we've already discussed this with the tax agent, so going forward, they won't have this issue. We did have a little bit of a turnover on who was actually taking care of this for us with the tax agent, whereas before we didn't have to, realistically, we didn't have to actually give as much scrutiny to what they were doing. Now we have to, unfortunately. Like, so this is where we are.
I mean, it's the right thing to be accurate.
No
So-
worries.
So that just kind of begs my next question.
Sure.
then. So there were 2, I recall, the last month, boy, time goes by fast. So then there was Christmas and New Year's. But anyway, there were 2 where there was $150 short. So when it's short,
So there are
so
some
someone
that.
paid $750.
Yes, okay.
The total bill was $900. There were 2 that were in that case.
Sure.
So when there's a gap of $150, who makes up that gap?
So normally in that case, it usually means that the trustee isn't actually, that our tax agent isn't actually doing the transfer. They're actually requiring the buyer to do that transfer. So we don't have to worry about that what was previously $150 is now $155 difference.
And then who comes
The
up?
question becomes who actually does the title transfer, us or them?
Well, the title transfer, I'm not worried about. I'm actually, who comes up, where does the extra money come from? So if a person gives $750 for the tax sale, and the total bill is $900, where does the extra $150 come from?
What do you mean? I'm not really clear on what exactly the question is, so.
So just like on this one, there was the tax sale. The person that paid for the tax, in the arrears of tax, paid $750.
The 450 for the actual,
And then there was
Tax
$450,
agent,
and there was a couple other
then the
charges, and then
taxes, and
the
then the
total
tax
charges
of
was
that.
$900. So the extra $150, do you go back to the person that bought the sales tax?
in the
or-
event where we're not actually doing the title transfer, yes, they would actually get those funds back, and they would actually do the title transfer on their own. And again, determining whether or not they will do the transfer or we will do the transfer, that's something that we allow the tax agent to determine on their own, because they're the experts in that field. So.
Well, no doubt, I'm not an expert for sure. So, but going forward, then the paperwork will reflect the balance correctly. All right, thank you.
No problem. Next question.
Thank you. Any other questions for CJ on this particular issue? All right, seeing none, and if you could hang. All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And now we'll circle back, if that's okay with everybody, to the monthly report. Just, we have the treasurer here. I believe you had another question, Mr. Wilson.
Thanks, Stephanie. So I just, more for education. This is my first time or second time or whatever. So why is the latest report, why is it May, June, July, and why is there not a November report?
Well, so I will let you know that we've actually been doing a lot of catch-up over the past few years. So we still actually haven't gotten to a steady, solid state of actually providing those monthly reports. Partially because we actually moved to a financial system that actually doesn't make it it makes it more complicated for us to actually get the data that we need in order to actually do those monthly reports. But even aside from that, the upcoming reports are actually in progress now. They just need to be validated. They've actually mostly been completed. So you should be seeing those actually reflected on the website within the next week or so.
That's just a big gap, July to November, right?
Correct. And at the same time, and maybe you don't realize this, whatever, the height of our busy time begins in May and continues through basically October. So there's, I got 5 full-time staff, and hopefully we'll get that corrected this year, and a couple of part-time individuals that help out with this. And the reality is that at the end of the day, whatever, we don't have the manpower. So it's either we collect the funds and get this money distributed to these folks, or we do these other things. So it's more of I have to make a decision whether or not, which thing is gonna actually be most important, and the school districts are a little bit more needing the funds to actually make sure things are taken care of. So again, decided to go with distribution and getting funds out to folks over dedicating that additional time to the monthly reports.
Are you saying that you're short-staffed?
I am, no question.
And what do you think the next steps are to add staff?
And we've already discussed that, whatever. I'm like, compared to other counties, I'm definitely at a deficit when it comes to personnel. And that's something that hopefully we can get addressed this year.
All righty, thank you. Now, one other question. So on a couple of those reports, on a couple of the accounts, it was a negative balance, and the negative balance was growing. So how does that get reconciled?
You mean the cash balance on the very first?
Yeah, there's like, I don't know, 50 or 60 line items, and a couple line items are negative.
So that's more of a question for the auditor. We simply report on what's actually listed when we actually go through things. As far as whether or not something is negative or not, they would probably be able to give you more of an understanding of why that's allowed to move forward.
All right, so it's on your report, but you're not responsible for understanding.
I'm simply reporting what the actual balances are, sir.
Okay. Thank you for that education.
Cool.
So when the auditor does the auditing report, and the auditor's finished his November report, he's not really looking at what was issued between July and November from the Treasury Department.
That's more of a question for the auditor. I won't even begin to try and suppose that I know what actually goes on in that office.
Righty,
Okay,
thank you.
no problem.
Any other questions for CJ? Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming and explaining that, Matheus. Okay, so items to the auditor's reports are on file. Other business, chair's report. The one thing I did want to mention is that we are going to take advantage of the special finance, or the special study session. I can't remember that ever, which I believe is January 24th at 6 p.m. here in this room, and it is going to be a new member orientation. Any members are more than welcome to attend. It's going to be heavy finance, but not only finance. So it's going to be, I've been working with the amazing staff over in the admin office to kind of put this together. It's going to be a special finance meeting. It's just going to be kind of like a budget 101, how to understand, like when we read these, what are all these numbers saying? What are the typical votes you can anticipate having in the year? And then just some other things like here's an org chart for the, just a general orientation. Welcome to the board, financial orientation. And obviously anybody's welcome to come. It's a public meeting. So even if you've been here for years and years, if you got nothing to do on the 24th at 6 o'clock, you are more than welcome to come. And huge thanks to everybody in Steve's office who's been helping put this together. We used to do a lot more new member board orientations, and I'm excited that we're kind of getting back to that. Okay, things to be put on the consent agenda. A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and B2.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is policy, personnel, and appointments. Chris?
Thank you, Chair Patterson. The monthly human resources reports are in our packet at pages 22 to 29. I'll just call your attention to the vacant positions listing on page 27. And we actually have 60 vacant positions out of approximately 615 people on the payroll here in Champaign County. So we're looking for about 10% of the workforce that we normally have. We've added a couple of folks here and there, but we're still very shy on assistant public defenders, court service officers, sheriff's patrol, and a very big, 14 correctional officers and sergeant at corrections, and 7 add that. So we got about 20 correctional people that we're short on, and looking, including, there's some very special positions. I'd also kind of call your attention to page 29, and we apparently we only hired one veteran, and that I just call that to your attention and encourage people in your district to consider working for Champaign County, so that we can carry on our work. The next item of business, Roman numeral 8, number 2, or A, number 2, request for Job Content Evaluation Committee to review finance specialist position for Administrative Services Department. That's on in your handbook, page 30 to 32. This is a new position that would support our Director of Finance, Ms. Tammy Ogden, so that she can kind of breathe. I understand she kind of doesn't even have time for that anymore. And also to help with payroll, accountant, and human resources. So this would be a multitasking person that would be kind of have their finger in a lot of different things, and would help in our administrative services. Okay, so request for Job Content Evaluation Committee to reduce a finance specialist for the position for the Administrative Services Department. Do I hear a motion? Ms. Cowart and Ms. Leah Taylor, all in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Motion carries.
Do we have a chance for discussion on these items, Chris?
Absolutely. Maybe I kind of went too fast on that. I'm sorry, Jeff. Please, what's your question?
Well, actually, I have questions on the first part, so should I have a question on the first part or the second part? So I had some questions on the report, but do we want to do the report or?
We don't really vote on the report, but go ahead with the report.
Oh, I just had some questions.
Well,
Okay. So a couple of questions that I had on the report were, what I was concerned about was the workman's compensation report.
mm-hmm.
And it seems like the backlog on workman's compensation reports is increasing rather than decreasing. Is there a reason for that? Or who would understand that?
You're not me. Perhaps County Executive Summers or Ms. Ogden? Or is that going to be, we'll have to get back to you?
Yeah, I just would like to understand the backlog and why it keeps growing and what it takes to resolve it.
Well, as you can kind of tell from some of, I would guess that, we're kind of looking for a lot of positions in the county, but Mr. Summers, can you help us out with this?
At this time, I would like to ask for Jeff's patience to give me a chance to take a closer look at this, and I will get back with him and provide information.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and yeah, I'm very patient, just would like an understanding.
I could be wrong, but I believe that what this reflects is the number, so there's the new claims, there's the closed and then open. I think until somebody's all the way through their workman's comp, that is open. So that number, I don't think it should be read as that, like, there's 37 more that are like, one more is like under investigation. I could totally be wrong about this, but I just think that's just open, like open workman's comp that is still being,
Yeah, I
you know what I
agree.
mean? That's still
It's-
being
It's in
like,
process of
yeah,
being reviewed,
right.
just, I guess sometimes metrics are important to me. I'm just trying to understand why the number's growing, or maybe the number's not clearly accurate, but that's okay. Because I think on December 2022, you had 8 new claims, 3 closed, that would be 5, and 5 from 37 of November would be, I think, 42, but maybe this number should be 41 or 42, but you can probably look into that. Then the next question I had, which I thought was, I just wanted understanding, on page 26, it talks about unemployment reports. There were 5 claims filed, 5 determined, and it looks like all 5 are fraudulent. Is that correct, and is that typical? What's the fraud mean by the number?
I'm sorry, Jeff, I don't have anything for you on that. I'll defer again to the county executive. Maybe, do you have anything on that, Mr. Summers?
Tammy just indicated that we have had a couple claims that have turned out to be fraudulent in the course of the last year. We're showing 3 with Sheriff's Office, 1 with RPC. Again, let me check with Sheriff's Office, RPC, and Court Services. And Jeff, I will respond to your questions.
Thanks, Steve. One more question. On the 60 vacancies, which is probably unacceptable, I assume, because the workload doesn't get finished, does each department, are they solely and uniquely responsible for filling those vacancies?
Again, I'm going to defer to the county executive, but I would expect that a lot of the departments, filled by elected officials, probably do their own posting. Steve?
We've had significant numbers of vacancies for well over a year, Jeff. Some of the positions we've got here indicated that they're due to a promotion, but we've had a consistently high level of vacancies in 2022, and honestly, that's allowed at least some flexibility in funding positions. We've had additional money in those budgets, but the county has had difficulty filling positions for a number of years. We do need more HR support to try and see if we can address this better. At this point, I'll have to say, though, that we're still in turnover with regard to my assistant, and we've not tried to take any steps at this point, although I know we're looking at doing different social media outreaches to try and draw people to Champaign County as an employer.
And to that point, the Champaign County Economic Development Corporation received some ARPA funds to recruit people to work in Champaign County. And I talked with Carly McCory on that very point and asked her to be sure to try to include vacancies within Champaign County. I don't know how your life's been, but I'm drowning in emails and it seems like death from 100 different little things. And so and as Mr. Summers mentioned, this has been for quite a long time, and our need for correctional officers to give relief to the folks working in the juvenile and the regular Pope jail. We've had a very difficult time with that, and I'm sure that Ms. Elizabeth Pollock, who's here, can kind of speak to the assistant public defender problem or vacancies concern.
Mr. Storr.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ingram.
Yeah, just for kind of a specific redirect for Mr. Wilson's specific question. And Ms. Michaels, I don't know if you ever had to fill a position during your time as a county elected official, but generally, yes, for me, I had an opening during my time as recorder, and it was my responsibility to fill it. That does also come with some pitfalls with how hard it can be because, again, some of these positions are more specialized and harder to fill, and depending on your budget and the amount of money that you're able to offer, we are not always as competitive with some other, particularly when it comes to the sheriff's department, when it comes to wages for them versus what they could be making at the University, Urbana, or Champaign. All of these things kind of combine, but I believe you were asking if the department heads were responsible for that, and generally the answer is yes.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, recent past recorder Ingram. Ms. Furtado, Dr. Furtado.
I think it also speaks to the fact that we as a county, and this is mind-blowing to me, I say this every time I bring this up, we are the third biggest employer in Champaign County, and we don't have a dedicated HR generalist. I don't understand that. I didn't understand that when I got on the board 5 years ago, and the old county administrator showed me an org chart, and I was like, where's your HR person? Typically, in a functional organization, you have a dedicated HR person who does things like oversees benefits and trainings and that kind of thing, but also implement strategies around recruitment and retention. I work at the HR school at the University of Illinois. There's whole classes that are taught about recruitment and retention. And so I think there's a lot of institutional reasons, as Mike brought up. We are under market in a lot of these positions. That makes recruitment a problem and retention a problem. But I also think that we were down, in my opinion, in the admin staff, we were down 2 key roles. We had no backup finance person. So like to our payroll clerk, some of our functional like budget entry type of stuff, and our insurance, which we've addressed with this position that Chris brought up earlier on the agenda. But in my mind, we are still down a dedicated HR generalist that would help fulfill those roles and be of service to all the elected officials. It is illogical to think that each individual elected official or department head is solely responsible for doing their recruitment. That's not how a well-run, some of those services I think really should be centralized, and that there are strategies for that and methodologies for that people with that kind of degree could help us with. So one of the things I would like us as a body to think about going forward is, as Steve said, and I'm going to push back, it's been more than a year. We've had this list has been long since I've been on the board. Where it's been long has shifted around, but I mean, we for a while there basically had no deputy coroners. Then for a while we had no public defenders. Then for a while we had no one working in animal control. Like, it just is a moving target, but it's always a target. And I think we as a body need to address that. And that's something that I think we need to, I know that Executive Summers said that this was a priority for him, is straightening out how HR is done in this county. And it is, as finance chair, it is definitely something for me, because there is institutional memory that's lost, and also continually having to recruit and lose people that we are not retaining cost the county money and efficacy. And it means that we aren't serving our constituents in the way that we should be. So that is, I feel like today, taking the first step on I think that is the more immediate need in admin. Taking the first step on the finance backup person, I think, is crucial. We got to get some of these positions backed up. If they leave, we have like very little institutional memory, right? But I do think the second piece is that we need a better HR strategy than we currently have, and have had since I've been on this board.
So this is actually a worthwhile discussion, correct? rather than just blowing over the statistics. So is there, how do we, not knowing what the next steps are, is how do we ask the executive to find an HR generalist, or how do we open a spot for that position, or what's our next step in that area?
Funny you should mention. If you'll bear with us, we'll get to the chair's report and we can take up part of that, if you'll bear with me. Now, moving on to,
Excuse me, can I
Sure.
make a comment about the request that we just voted yes on? I still want to vote yes.
Thank
I
you.
still want to vote yes, let me just say that. But my question with this is when you're hiring somebody and you're putting them in a threefold position, you've got, well, it says that it would be a backup for finance, it's a backup for insurance, it's a backup for the other, for payroll. That's 3 spots. So I just say that we have to be very careful how that person's time is balanced when they look at this evaluation. What is the percentage that this person is going to be required? And the time frames, if somebody's on vacation or whatever, certainly can't be when the budget's being done. So those are things that need to be considered by this evaluation content for the weight of their experiences and the pay that goes with that. Does that make sense? Okay.
It sure does. And
I still vote yes.
well, thank you. And we'll get back to it. And I'm sorry I kind of ran through things. I was trying to be a little bit efficient. In conversation with County Executive Summers, he indicated to me that some of these departments, especially the finance, they need some backup, some help, so that they can take the time off that we all need to kind of restore our mental health. And the person that we hope to hire here will be a wonderful person. Certainly, they'll get to learn an awful lot, and perhaps some of these duties may be shed as we kind of do things like get the HR person that Stephanie spoke of, and that County Executive Summers spoke of, and so forth. So we're tackling a number of things and trying to deal with them as best we can with the resources that we're given. I see Jeff looking like he is just not satisfied with this, and we'll see. We'll see. Do we want to revisit the job content evaluation committee for a finance specialist position? No? Okay. Moving on. And
Chris, did we vote on that?
We
Yeah,
did.
okay.
We did. And I think that we also voted to appoint Robert. Nope, no, we didn't. Okay, I'm sorry. Number 8, A2A, resolution appointing Robert Kolakowski to the Tolono Fire Protection District, unexpired term ending April 30th, 2024. Can we have a Mr. Ingram?
So moved.
And Jen Straub, thank you. I got second, thank you. And I'll make a note. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. Esri?
Yes, I guess just wondering a couple things on page 34 there. The date of his application shows as 3/21/2022, and wondering why. I mean, did previous executive not bring this forward for some reason? I mean, is that the reason? And then also just wondered why there's no signature, I guess. But that might be something for Mr. Summers, yeah.
Sure. I'm not sure that that's the correct date on it. I believe 2022 is when the application was made. This was for a person that retired and wanted to be replaced very quickly. They left just at the very end of December, wanted somebody replaced effective early this year. I did not reach out to other folks within Tolono because we had 3 applications that were within a year of folks that had been interested in those positions. So I reached out to all 3 individuals, reached out to the chief of the Tolono Fire, and had a conversation with him, and felt that there was no need to seek other applicants because we already had 3 interested individuals that I'd spoken with.
Okay, so it's an old application that basically this person wasn't selected in a previous round. Okay,
Correct.
I have no problem with the
Correct.
person. I even spoke to Mr. Brad Clemens, former county board, and he had no issues. I mean, he's from that area and Tolono Highway Commission. I was just curious about that date, so that explains it. It was in the files, you could say.
I recall the date being 2022, but I'll look at it again and see.
No,
I
that's
spoke
that's
with all
fine
of
with
you.
me. That answers it. His name was basically in the files, and talking with multiple people, he's the name that came forward, so that's fine. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, I had conversations with all 3 individuals that were not picked in the last round and talked with Dr. Storr probably about a week ago.
Ms. Michaels?
Just very quickly, with Mr. Kolakowski and the board liaisons, these resolutions will actually be typed with numbers to them at the full board meeting because they weren't in our packet. Till next Thursday.
Okay, Megan?
Sorry, they don't get numbers on them until they go forward to county board.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Just one more quick one. Is there a start and end date for this one? Seems like it's blank on the first page.
I believe that they would start immediately, and according to what I have here, that the term would end a year from April. Steve, that's kind of what I see on the packet. Aaron?
With the explanation that his name was basically kind of sitting on the shelf, he maybe had dates filled in on the original, but I don't know if they've been basically kind of blanked off since this isn't, those dates wouldn't apply. I mean, that's just one thought.
The dates would have been in place had he been selected. This was when he was applying for a position about a year ago.
So his start date would be immediately?
Yes, this is for a person that left and needed to be replaced as soon as possible. Yes, this isn't on the regular cycle. This was an early person that, early resignation.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries. Just was looking at the form and I couldn't figure out the start and end.
It's unusual for our regular appointments, yes. Is there any other discussion to the motion? Okay. All in favor of the resolution appointing Robert Kolakowski to Tolono Fire Protection District signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion passes. Thank you. And next item is resolution appointing county board liaisons. That's on page 35. We have a few vacancies. I think that Chair Patterson is looking, no, that's not Chair. It's, well, oh gosh, it's Steve Summers, our county executive, who will be recruiting folks. And if you have do you want to speak to that, Steve?
Yes, appointments seem like they are a friction point here, or have been, but I think it's getting a little bit better. There are a few positions that I still need to fill, but I think by and large we're pretty good. I'm still reaching out to some folks. I'm happy with the folks that have been willing to step forward. I know some folks I've had difficulty contacting. If there's an issue, please let me know, and I'll switch things around to accommodate your schedule if this is not going to work for you.
I think I see a few hands up. Ms. Carter?
I did reach out to you. I didn't hear anything back. So I'm not appointed to anything, it doesn't look like.
Well, some of the appointments that you'd expressed interest in, I know pretty much what your work schedule is, and I didn't think midday meetings would really going to work for you very well. So I did not reach out to you to see if that would work. And on a couple of the other people, on a couple of the positions that I had considered you for, other folks had already stepped forward and were willing to work those in. So I'm happy to talk with you at greater length about other positions if you're interested. But the ones that I think either you or Chair Patterson had thought you would be a good match for were midday meetings that I thought would be difficult for you.
I'm totally free on Mondays and Tuesdays, just for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
We had some discussion about this at caucus, and maybe we can try to get together informally or send emails around. Is there other discussion about the liaison appointments? These are really important for the organizations. Ms. Taylor.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I dropped the ball on replying to you, Steve, on this. Is it possible to get myself the Developmental Disabilities Board?
I see no reason why not.
I would
think
like
that
that,
is a
please.
position that has not been filled for a while, but
Okay.
that would be great. I'll go ahead and pencil you in.
Thank you.
I'll comment to Ms. Taylor and say thank you for doing that. I worked in intellectual disabilities for a number of years, and you'll find it very rewarding. Ms. Carter.
I was just going to say, for those vacancies, is there any way that we can see the dates and times of their meetings so we can kind of coordinate with our schedules and maybe get back with Steve if that's possible? Thank you.
Steve,
Certainly.
can you help us with that?
Certainly.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds like progress. There's a bunch of appointments that are available.
Do we need to make a motion and act on the appointments? I forget.
No,
I didn't think.
I don't think so. Those are the discretion of the county executive. No?
Says resolution.
The advice and consent of the county board.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented, and I guess go ahead and add Ms. Leah Taylor as the liaison to be appointed to the Developmental Disabilities Board as well, as opposed to what's presented.
Second, Thor's Land.
Thank you, Eric. And further discussion. This may come back next month as well, because if we don't fill all the vacancies. All in favor of of Aaron's motion for the liaisons as they currently stand, signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Thank you. Okay, currently list of available appointments and is on the website. Item D annual listing of expiring appointments on pages 36 and 37. And there's quite a few of those. They are for cemetery associations, board of review, water district, sanitary district, fire protection districts, drainage districts, public aid, merit, sheriff, merit commission, zoning board of appeals, that's a hard one, and mental health board. All of these are coming up in the coming year, and I encourage you to reach out to your constituents and to folks that are on these commissions and committees to see if these folks if they'd like to continue to serve. And I'm having served on this last year, I know a lot of these folks have served on these commissions and drainage districts for quite a long time. And I think trying to recruit some younger folks to serve on these commissions would be both beneficial for the community and also for their own education and about their committee. Moving on to item E, applications for open employment. Oh gosh, sorry. Okay, we've got a couple of applications here for Rural Transit Advisory Group. And I think that'll probably be taken up probably next month. I don't think that we have an appointment for these in this going around. We have monthly reports on sale of licenses and fees and so forth, and a semi-annual report for the same on pages 42 to 44. I don't have any other business, but I do have a chair's report. Last month, in November, we had a presentation by the Gallagher Group about their study of our workforce. And the $180,000 study was a PowerPoint presentation and a 135-page document that I haven't read yet. And I understand Dr. Furtado got additional information.
The executive pursued making sure that we had the full data. There was a little bit of a gap in transition from the other executive to now. So Rita has tracked that down from us. So we got all of the information from the company that we paid for to give us that information, and we got it today, or at least I got the notice that we got it today. So
It was today.
that will actually, so big thanks to Rita for getting that for us. We paid for it, we should have it. So therefore, as if we do decide to use it, we actually have what we paid for.
Thank you, Stephanie. And to that topic and Jeff's, Mr. Wilson's comments earlier and my concerns over the past year, I'm forming the Ad Hoc Workforce Committee Book Club. And our first task will be to take a look at the data and the 135-page report and the PowerPoint, and then we'll have a little meeting to decide how to proceed onward. If you'd like to join this wonderful book club, I would like for you to give me your name after the meeting, and we'll set a time given a reasonable period for us to look through some of the stuff, or all of the stuff, excuse me, and get together with Ms. Ogden. I know wanted to be on that committee, and Matt Bannock, and Diane Michaels was very excited about that, and Jen Lokshin and Dr. Furtado. And this is not an exclusive club. Anybody can join, and but maybe we'll get a little place at the Champaign Library or something to discuss. Yes, Jeff.
I'm reading a lot of books right now, but I suppose one more is not that bad, so you can include me on your team.
I think that's, given your eye for detail, sir, I welcome your participation.
All right, thank you.
And with that, I really did try to make it concise. Really did. And I was making good progress at it too. Chair Patterson. Oh, wait a minute, I need to designate the items to be placed on the consent agenda. And that would be items 8A2, 8A2A, small a, and B. And I think those are the only items that we've voted on, and they were unanimous and could go on consent. Chair Patterson.
All right, next on the agenda, we have Justice and Social Services. Leah?
Thank you. Item A, we have the monthly reports are available on each department's webpage, listed in your packet there for probation and court services, October and November of 2022, public defender, November of 2022, animal control, November 2022. We have the emergency management agency for September and October of 2022. Moving on to item B.
Question.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Just a few questions.
Can you talk into your microphone, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sounds like a show or something like that. Can you hear me now? So, hey, my question is, when I'm looking at the probation and court services report, so there's an active caseload of 97 left. How is that caseload worked off?
How is the caseload worked off?
Yeah.
Like, how do they get rid of their cases?
Yeah, what do they do?
I am happy to find out and get back to you. I don't know.
Okay. And then the next question is, there's 40 open warrants. Is that typical, that 40 open warrants?
I have no idea if that's typical or not for this time of year. Again, I can ask.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Maybe you're not the right person to answer that, but I don't know. Just asking.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah, I'm not sure I know the right person either, but I will say that one of the things as a new board member you should investigate is doing a ride-along with sheriff deputy, because one of the parts of their job is to serve these warrants. And typically in the morning, they have a big packet of things, and they go out and they try to find people and serve them with these notices to appear or a warrant. And I imagine the sheriff and maybe the state's attorney's office can explain to you what a typical load is, but they have very busy days. So I think it would be an important thing for you to do, and maybe give you some understanding, at least that part of what we supervise here at the county. So I suggest you doing it. Get a hold of Dustin and ask to do a ride along for a day. And I would recommend do the whole shift because it's eye-opening.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Is my only thought is if there's a report part of the agenda, then someone should understand what's in the report or what it means, right, rather than just have a piece of paper. And then the last item on the Emergency Management Agency. So the October report was dated November 7th, so we're in January. Why isn't there a November report?
That's a good catch. I didn't see that myself. I will contact them and find out.
All right, thank you.
Making a note, hold on. Dr. Stower?
Hi. It's been a while since we've had Misty Bell come in and talk to us about reentry. I miss that fellow.
Would you like to see Misty Bell come and talk to us about Rosecrans?
I think I would.
Okay.
It happens that I kind of get his emails. I never got off the list when I left the Reentry Council, and so I'm still on the list. And I've noticed that they've canceled a lot of meetings, and I thought it'd be interesting to kind of see what's going on.
Okay. I will make that happen. Thank you, Dr. Stower, for that suggestion. Which brings us to our next item. Oh, Samantha?
Yeah. And can we normalize communicating amongst each other if we have any questions outside of this meeting? If we're going over our agendas at home, because you are a Republican or because I am a Democrat does not mean that we can't communicate amongst each other. That way we have a better understanding before we come to the meeting is usually how I like to do it. I don't know if that's something that you would be open to as well, but I don't like the throwing the dabs and little smart comments, and I just don't feed off into that. I think the energy that we have on the board right now is very positive, and I would like to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Anybody else have any questions or comments at this point? All right, thank you. Moving on, item B, which we halfway covered. The Rosecrans Reentry Financial Report is on pages 45 and 46 for October and November of last year. That is information only, and we have had a request for Misty Bell to come and speak, so I will make that happen. Moving on, we have item C, which I am most excited about, and I hope you are too. We have our new public defender, Ms. Pollock, here to speak with us.
And thank you, everybody, for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has, but I kind of figured the way that I would approach this was to give you kind of a breakdown of what I've learned in the last month of this position, the greatest areas of needs that I have identified, and then I have an ask for you. So first and foremost, I've been doing this for about a month now. For those of you who don't know me, I came from the Federal Public Defender's Office. I was there for 11 years, and before that I was in private practice at the Beckett Law Firm for 6. So I've been adjacent to the Champaign County Public Defender's Office, but never inside of it. And what I learned when I took this position was that this office is fundamentally in the dark ages of technology. We had no electronic files at this office. By contrast, at the federal department, I haven't had a piece of paper on my desk since 2013. Everything has been totally electronic in terms of filing, in terms of reviewing discovery, in terms of making sure there is a backup present so that if something were to happen to the paper file, that the client just doesn't disappear. We didn't have Adobe Acrobat in the office. So in order to review the PDF files that come to us from the state, we had to use a free online program called Adobe DC. We have no ability to track our caseload. The monthly reports that you see are run for me by an employee of the circuit clerk's office. The JANO system is the case management software that the court uses, but there are 4 pieces to it that are all separate. The circuit clerk has their side, the state, probation, and the public defender's office all have separate pieces of this system. And when JANO was created, they did not create a function that allows me to run a report. So I literally cannot go into the system and say, how many open cases do I have? What types of cases do we have? What are my caseloads by attorney? What are my caseloads by case type? I literally have no information on that. And I have been working with the JANO people to try to create that function, and I'm being told that it's going to be about a year out before I am able to run those reports. So while I am trying to gather my data to present to you, I have to run it through a third party, and then I don't trust that that data is even accurate. The first active caseload that I asked her to run came back with 13,000 open cases, which is garbage because it's not true. What happened was our side of JANO, our staff was responsible for entering a closed code for that case. For staffing reasons, they were not able to keep up and they just didn't do it for about 10 years. So there were open cases in my system dating back to 2008. That's not good data. It's not accurate. I can't give you a good picture of what I'm working with. We have an absolutely unmanageable amount of electronic discovery. Like I said, we're in the dark ages. I'm trying to move us forward as quickly and inexpensively as I can. But what that means basically is pretty much every case now, all the way down to traffic cases, is going to have some form of electronic discovery. There's going to be a dash cam video from a police cruiser. You're going to have body camera footage from an officer doing an interview. We get recorded interviews from inside police stations. Every single case has electronic data, not to mention the telephone and computer extractions that come with that type of electronic data. Right now, we have no ability to streamline the review of that data. So each attorney is responsible for watching what can be terabytes worth of video in each case, which is not a good use of their time. But if it's not done, we are missing things, and we are falling below what I think is an adequate threshold for representation of our clients. We had no office manual, we have no training manual, we have no training or very low training budget. All of these things I am working on currently. So that being said, that sounds dire from my point of view, and it is. We have made some, I think, improvements relatively quickly. I procured Adobe Acrobat Pro licenses for everybody in the office with the help of MC and the IT department. I want to give a shout out to the IT department for everything they have done to bring us up to speed. They are incredibly responsive. I know they're understaffed as well, but they are really working hard with me to make sure that we come up to speed on those things. I have posted positions and I have hired 4 people. I have a new investigator. I have a new traffic attorney starting on the 17th. I have a new juvenile adjudication attorney who just started on the 3rd. And I also have a new misdemeanor attorney who started on the 3rd. I have an additional felony attorney who will be my 4th attorney hire coming in also on January 17th. So the staffing is getting closer to under control. One of the things that I noted in trying to address that situation was that we don't have an advertising budget in the line item. So as Dr. Furtado was stating earlier, we don't have the capability to advertise for these positions other than posting it where it is free, which often does not have the greatest reach, as I'm sure you can all understand. So I had the positions posted on the county website. I looked into various bar associations. I did what I could locally with the Champaign County Bar Association. But the Illinois State Bar Association, which is where we need to be recruiting, it's a $600 a month charge to post a single position. We have no money for that in the budget. So fundamentally, the way that I have procured these attorneys is nagging the crap out of everybody that I know and trying to get them to spread the word and agree to come and work for me. That is now exhausted. I have pushed every button I can push locally, and even though I've lived here for an eternity, everybody else is well employed, so nobody else is coming to work for me, and I'm still quite short-staffed in the felony division in particular. So I have also explored the possibility of an embedded externship program with the College of Law, where I would have students come to me not for partial credit, but for a full semester with a 711 license, which would allow them to practice and assist in handling some of the lower caseloads, which would then allow me to promote from within and hopefully handle those felonies a little bit more adequately than we're doing. I have mandated electronic files. We now have an expansion to our system. We have an extra terabyte worth of storage on our share drive. So everybody can now keep an electronic copy. The secretaries have been trained in opening electronic files, how to download, how to electronically file documents in the circuit court. So we are moving forward in that regard. And the Adobe Acrobat licenses were key to that. And we have started accepting murder appointments again. I am taking them personally because I don't think it's right that attorneys from the community that we are, and I asked for a number for you, I didn't get an answer about how much we're paying those attorneys to take the cases that should belong with the public defender's office. So I don't have an answer, but I will the next time I address you. But it is thousands and thousands of dollars that are being paid to private attorneys who may or may not be qualified to handle those cases. I am, so I'm taking them for now. And we'll see how long we can keep that up before I jump off a cliff. Hopefully not very soon. So I have assessed what I think are the most pertinent immediate needs of the office. And I also want to give a shout out to Tammy Ogden, who I email daily and ask all kinds of questions because I'm not familiar with your budget process and I'm slowly figuring it out, and she has been exceptional. And I wanted to say thank you for all of the help that you've given me getting acquainted with the position. There's a lot of things I want to ask for, but I'm only asking for 2 tonight. One of them came to you in a memo. It's about the Justice Text Program. This is a program that was founded by graduates of the University of Chicago who saw the disparity in representation between public defender offices and state attorney offices. And their purpose was to streamline our efficiency, to make it so that we can review electronic discovery in a way that we are not spending hours and hours and hours watching video for the one nugget of information that we're needing to get out of that video. And what the Justice Text Program does is you upload a file to their server and it automatically transcribes any video that you show it. So it will create a transcript which is then searchable, so that instead of watching 6 hours of video, Justice Text converts it. You can then search for the words that you're looking for. They have a 60 to 80% accuracy rate. Obviously, there's going to be some errors with regards to words that the program doesn't understand, or if there's an accent or something, it might not pick it up. But it is supposed to increase our review of digital discovery by 50 to 75%. That is something we need. Our attorneys cannot spend that kind of time on those videos, and we have to provide the baseline adequate level of representation to our clients that is required of us by the Constitution, and which, in my opinion, we are not doing right now for many, many reasons. That program is actually way cheaper than I thought it would be. It's only $4,800 for 4 separate licenses that would cover our 4 current felony attorneys who are the most overburdened right now. And I have written a memo to explore whether there's ARPA funding available for that, which has gone to Dr. Furtado. So thank you for that suggestion. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the Justice Text Program if anybody has them.
Ms. Locke?
Sorry. Hi. As some might not be aware, I'm a former public defender myself, so I'm going to have some technical questions for you here. First of all, thank you. The dark ages that you were in, I practiced in McLean County. I had no idea how bad it was here.
Me either.
My goodness. But I do have some concerns. Some of my worst memories of practice were watching long videos where it's silent for 40 minutes, and then all of a sudden there's something that happens. And if we've got 60 to 80% effectiveness, is that as they're reporting it to us, or like, I'll back up. Do we know any other jurisdictions that are using this program?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Cook County uses it. Okay. I believe there are 50 public defender offices that are using Justice Text right now.
Okay. So, yeah, I had looked on their website, and it was like a whole bunch of like Sonoma and around, but Cook County using it means that maybe it will be effective with the Illinois accent, which is important, because a lot of times my jurors couldn't understand what was being said on the videos. So it's making sure that it would be able to understand what people were saying. Can attorneys watch the videos themselves, or are we just going to be putting trust into the system that if we type in a keyword that it's going to be accurate in and of itself?
That's a good question. Yes, they can still watch them. I mean, you can still watch the traditional way. And primarily, this is for us ferreting out positive evidence for our clients. If the state is going to use a video and evidence at trial, they must disclose it. If it is on the exhibit list as something that's going to be entered into evidence, then obviously the defense attorney is going to pay closer attention in particular to that video. So primarily, this would not be used to generate evidence. It would not generate a transcript, which would then be admissible in court. It is for review purposes only, and it's a head start. Of course, nothing can make up for eyes on the prize. So if the attorney is going to plan on using it, they should watch it. And I will encourage them to do that. So this is for just what you said, the 6 hours, and there's 2 hours of talking and 6 hours of video. This will review all of that, and it will give you timestamps for when the talking starts so that you can go directly to that point as opposed to sit and scroll and then miss something and have to scroll back over again.
That is magnificent. I wish I would have had that. In terms of anything else, you said we have 4 separate licenses for the felony attorneys. Would paralegals be able to access it within those same licenses?
You want to put a paralegal on my budget? Because I would
yes,
love
I would
to.
love to, and I will fight tooth and nail
That's
for
not
you.
a
but yes.
concern right now because
Yeah,
we
okay,
don't have a
it.
paralegal.
Okay.
But my understanding is that the licenses are for individuals in the office. But that being said, if you want to use your buddy's license to review something, I'm not going to tell anybody.
Nor would we expect you to. I have a question about the 7-Eleven. Do we want to stay just with justice text for this moment, or can I ask about?
I'll
potential
answer
first?
whatever
Okay.
you want.
All right, great. You said you explored bringing in a 7-Eleven. What is there a holdup in it? Do we need a funding line for that as well?
No,
or-
they're unpaid interns. So the College of Law will provide externship credit to the law students who come and work for me. We don't pay them anything. The 7-Eleven license is something that is signed off on by me, the dean of the students at the College of Law, and the student, and then the Supreme Court. So it's Illinois Supreme Court Rule 711. And it allows a senior law student who meets the practice requirements, so they've had to have had 2 years or more of classes, and they have to fill out the application. And then I have to say I'm going to supervise them. So once they have that in their hand, as long as there is a licensed attorney in the courtroom, they can handle cases. And so my plan for them, I conceive of the externship program as a back and forth. So I'm getting something because they're doing work and saving my attorney's time. They're getting something because they are learning how to practice, and they are hopefully going out into the world to be stellar public defenders when they're done with the externship. So it's a give and take. I want them to have experience. I obviously want our clients to be well represented, which is why they need to have a supervising attorney over them. So they would be handling any case that they worked on. If a case goes to trial, they can cross a witness. If a case goes to a sentencing hearing, they can do the argument. If they can get into arraignment court and cover that for me, that would be a huge time savings because that's a hard thing for us to get covered right now with our staffing.
Since it's a full semester, obviously, we don't have them in place for this academic
Correct.
semester. Are we hopeful to have some for the summer?
So we have an externship program already, but it's part-time. So I have 6 externs who are coming next week. 4 of them are 7-Elevens. So they can only work 5 to 10 hours a week. So it's not a huge input into the office. The program that I proposed is going to the curriculum committee at the law school and would conceivably not start until next year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're
Thank you for all of your effort. I
Thank
very
you.
much appreciate it.
Diane Michaels?
Just going back to the 4,800 for the 4 people, is that an annual fee?
It is.
And are we tied in for a certain number of years? Like, do we have to lock in for 3 years or something like that?
No, there's no time commitment. It's an annual thing. And if it doesn't get added to my budget when we start talking about that, then we won't have the program next year.
Right. And then it's unlimited use.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Carter?
I hope you can answer this question for me. I had a constituent reach out to me last week concerning some footage during an arrest, and they're having issues with getting the footage before they go to trial. So she said that the public defendant made a comment to say, what if the police officer's body cam battery went out, and so they didn't have the footage? And so basically she made it seem like that, oh, it doesn't matter if they have the footage or not, but it does. Her nephew did admit that some of the drugs was his, but there were, I guess, different kinds of drugs. So he wants to know exactly in the home, where were the drugs picked up at? Where did the police find the drugs? And she thinks that it's very important that they get that footage. And she said that she's asked multiple times and she hasn't received that footage. So are you telling me that right now we're having problems with getting footage pertaining to trials?
No,
or?
that's not it at all.
Okay.
So the state's attorney's office has a policy about the disclosure of electronic evidence. We have to ask for it.
Okay.
They don't necessarily disclose it automatically. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But if there's something out there that we want and we don't have it, we have to send an electronic discovery request form to the state's attorney.
Okay.
Then they upload it to our shared discovery drive and we can view it. Now, that being said, sometimes the footage doesn't exist. Sometimes, like for example, Street Crimes Task Force, they don't wear body cams. So if it's a search warrant at a residence and they are entering to execute the search warrant and they are
Exactly.
plain clothes, they may not be wearing body cams. It doesn't apply to every unit all the time. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So it's possible. Also, it could be a malfunction with the body camera. I don't know. I'd have to look into it. If you want to email me the case number, I'll ask.
Okay.
I'd be happy to look into that for you. But there are instances I'll say it doesn't sound out of the realm of possibility that this video just doesn't exist.
She kind of expressed that she thought maybe that the public defender was maybe inexperienced. So my question to you was, are these students taking felony cases?
No, students don't take cases.
Are
They're not allowed to have cases. They have to work with the attorney underneath their supervision.
Okay.
And if a 7-Eleven student is going to litigate, then the client needs to consent. So they would have to meet the client. They would have to, run through things with them, make sure the client was comfortable. And
Okay.
only then would they be doing it. I'm not going to throw a second-year law student into a felony trial by themselves.
I would hope not. I mean, with the judicial system and I mean, there's a lot at stake. And so I
Correct.
would hope that you wouldn't throw inexperienced people over those cases because they're not able to pay. They are definitely looking forward to, getting their case resolved through your office. But I would hope that that is not the case, ma'am.
It's
But
not.
I would definitely be emailing you with that information.
I'd be happy to look at it.
Thank you.
Dr. Furtado was next.
I would like to suggest, I have a more extensive memo that I'm going to bring to because we usually do ARPA requests at the full board. So I have a more extensive memo specifically about the justice text to request the $4,800 for 2023. And then I would like to suggest we also do it for 2024. And then just as a heads up, you will also have a memo in your packet from the coroner asking for $41,000 for an x-ray machine. Our x-ray machine is 12 years old and we are paying between $8,000 and $10,000 a year to have people outside of this county do x-rays required for some of the autopsy work that he does. And so that just seems like not a great thing. So this particular, the justice text and the coroner's request will both be coming before you at the full board meeting, because that's usually when we handle ARPA requests. And we don't necessarily have to vote on those. If you recall, the money is appropriated. We just kind of have to give it a thumbs up and then, indicate to admin that we're okay with using ARPA. And we have more than enough money to accommodate both of those requests. So that, at least for the next 2 years, hopefully, we could do that without it taking a budget hit. And then after that, in the budget process for 2025, we'd have to build it into the budget.
Thank you. And if there are no further questions, yes.
Hey, thanks for being here. And thanks for diving into your job and being so professional about it. I really appreciate your actions and activity.
Thank you.
A couple follow-up questions, just because it was part of the conversation. I was curious about the caseloads. So you said it was 3,000, 30,000,
Wish I could tell you.
but you have no clue.
I am in the process of hand counting. So if I go to the courtroom calendar and I run the pre-trials for each felony courtroom and each other courtroom, I can count the number of open cases. And that's what I'm trying to do, but it's been time consuming.
Oh, sure.
I think we're around 4,000 open files, but that data might not be perfect. That's after I went through with Jano and eliminated anything that didn't have an active court date prior to January of 2022. So I got rid of a big chunk of those cases that I am almost certain were all closed. I cannot tell you of what remains, how many of them have closed since that report, and how many have incorrect data in the system, but I think we're probably around 4,000.
Okay. I've worked many backlogs in my previous life, and I know it's very difficult. So I guess my next question is, I'm glad you got into the justice text issue, and so this is my thought. It does seem like a small request. So my question is, we have, based upon this report, you have 6 public defenders still outstanding.
That's incorrect.
So it's really, so that needs
3.
to change, then there's really
Yeah.
just 3 public defenders outstanding. And then, I guess, since you're here and you're grappling with your new job, what are your biggest concerns? It's got to be more than just justice text.
It is, and that's what a brilliant segue into my next request.
I'm giving you a
Yeah, I
forum.
appreciate it. So my next request is I need a secretary, a new secretary. I have 2 right now. Those 2 ladies are absolutely fabulous. They are the front line of our office. They take all the calls, they meet with the public. They receive the brunt of the abuse for the attorney's failings, for not being able to speak with their clients. I'm sure everybody is aware that we have half of our detained clients in Kankakee, which has made it fundamentally impossible to visit them with any regularity. And I'll just tell you that my policy when I was with the Federal Defender's Office was I visited every jail and every client once a month, regardless. If I didn't have anything to say to them, then I would sit down, see how they're doing, make sure that they felt heard, listen to their concerns. And I never had a problem with anybody complaining about me ever. Maybe 5 times in 11 years did a client not like my advice and want a different attorney. That is almost 100% of our cases right now. And it is not the fault of the attorneys. It is the fault of the understaffing, and it is the fault of the jails being so distant that it is almost impossible to get up and back to Kankakee and see everybody. And we have 182 people in Kankakee who deserve and need to see or speak with their attorneys. And what I have come to realize is that our secretarial staff, we eliminated a secretarial position a decade ago, potentially. I'm not sure of the year, but due to budget cuts. We are left with 2. Those 2 answer the phones all day long. I had them count the number of calls for the last week so I could give you guys some numbers. And we are averaging 115 calls a day. 21 calls an hour of working hours they are answering. So they are literally on the phone all day, which means that they can't do some of the other things that are part of their job description. For example, sending a letter to a client after a court date. It's a basic thing. Imagine if you're a defendant and you are facing charges that could put you away from your family and away from your home in a crap prison with no resources for years. And you don't hear from your attorney for 3 months. Not because they're not working on your case, but because they literally don't have the time to take an hour of the day to write 50 letters and send them, because that's what needs to happen right now since the secretarial staff cannot do that. We eliminated the post-pretrial letter to clients when we lost that secretary because the 2 that were left couldn't make it happen during the working hours. And I think that it is a bare minimum. It's actually an ethical obligation that our office has to communicate with your clients. And that's how you gain their trust. That's how you work the case. That's how you make sure that they are informed and that they feel adequately represented, and that you make them feel as though they have a real attorney and not somebody who's just marking off time and never seeing them. And I think that if we could have an additional secretary, we could reinitiate sending those letters after each court date. And it may not even be personal contact, but it's the bare minimum that we should be able to do to let them know, when's your next court date? What's happening in your case? Have we received new discovery or haven't we? Are we set for trial? These clients don't know that information. And the attorneys are in court often, and when they aren't in court, they are back to back to back scheduled with calls at Kankakee and Champaign County. There's not enough hours in the day to fit them all in with the caseload that they currently have. And I think that if we had an additional secretarial position, we would be able to send those letters. The girls who are there right now, who are working their tails off and getting the brunt of the abuse from family members, which I will tell you is deserved at this point. Because if you were in that jail or you had a family member in that jail, what would you feel like if you hadn't heard from your attorney in 3 months? And the number of calls that I am personally getting and the number of emails I'm personally getting saying, I haven't talked to my attorney in 4 months. What's going on with my case? Can you please have them call me? This is unacceptable. And it is unacceptable. And my executive assistant, this is not her job description, but she still helps with the phones. She has worked 180 hours of overtime in the last 6 months on weekends, just doing the things that a normal secretarial position would be doing, like scanning our old paper files so that we have those out of the office. We have boxes and boxes and boxes of paper files that are just laying around and have not been appropriately scanned, and we're working on it, but we don't have the staff to do it. It is a minimal request, in my opinion. I can pay that person between $30,000 and $37,000 a year. That will be saved out of the budget by me taking the murder caseload back. And that's going to be money in the pocket of the county that nobody's going to have to spend because I'm taking those cases. So I think that it would be an absolute necessity. I frankly think that I can't believe you guys haven't been sued. I think it's coming, and I think that it will be meritorious because we are required to provide a baseline level of representation, and we are not doing it. And it's not the attorney's fault. So there will be more things in the future that I'm sure I'll be asking for and begging for in terms of resources, but right now this is an absolute must. And I would implore all of you to please support me in this and try to get me an additional secretarial position. Now, I have explored the possibility of a temporary position. That has to be limited to 30-day increments, and once the first 30-day increment is up, it requires union approval. I've talked to the union, they're not into it. So the likelihood of that, I figure I can put all this time in getting a temp worker and then have to let them go after 30 days and gain virtually nothing except having trained a person and then have them leave. This needs to be a full-time position, and I would like your support in getting that.
So I have a few questions. You have 2 legal secretaries that are in existence right now.
Correct.
Do you think that the job descriptions for those secretaries is adequate? Have you had a chance to review those existing job descriptions?
I have, and I think it is adequate.
This is maybe more of a question for Tammy. So typically how it works is whenever we have a new position, it's a 3-step process. So the position is asked for, the job description, it goes to Chris's committee for policy and personnel. Then it is reviewed by an internal group of people that, I don't know how many people are, I'm not part of that process, looks at it, decides what, particularly what salary classification it would go into. Although in this case, because there's an existing job, right, like that some of that would not take a particularly long time. Once it's done with the review process, it comes back to Chris's committee. We vote on the concept of the position, and then it comes to finance, and we vote on the finance committee. My question, and I think this is more a Tammy question or maybe an executive question, is if we did as a body decide to support this request, would we need to go through all of those steps, or like because of the rules of how we do this, or would we be able to expedite it given that it's a position that isn't already in existence?
For clarification, you're talking about a third position that would be the same as the 2 you already have?
Correct.
Okay,
a
so
new position, which I know we don't have in the line item right now.
is unbudgeted.
Correct.
Correct. So because there's already a position, it would not have to go through JEC. What would be required would be funding and then a board action that would change her org chart, adding the position. And then when that position is added to the org chart, it would be funded in the future. However, for the current fiscal year, she would require a budget amendment also.
Second question, you said that the union, and I'm sure this is the case, is not down with the temporary person. Have you talked, do they have to weigh in at all about expanding that bargaining unit? And I mean, I can't imagine that they would say no to another person, but is that something? like, have you talked to the union about a full-time person?
They want a union position is my understanding.
Okay.
They know that their 2 union staff are getting the shaft
Okay.
right now, and I think they want that to stop.
Okay, so then my third question is a question for you and Tammy, since you seem to have a great working relationship, and I hate to put something on there. Could you, the 2 of you, do a budget analysis? So I know that right now we have open positions. So there was like I think that's important to note when we get these reports from open positions, it's at a frozen moment of time, and if somebody's hired after, so example, you'll see that Bill Colbrook's position is on here. That position has subsequently been hired, right? So you see that, right? So I get that your understaffing isn't as bad as this report reflects, but there is, even though we're only partway through the year, right, there is going to be some cost savings because we are not fully staffed from what we budgeted. So do you think that it would be possible that the 2 of you could come up with like maybe a slightly sharper budget analysis of what you said you think you could hire this position for $37,000? I know we're very early in the year, but trying to figure out what that appropriation would actually look like. You know what I'm saying? Like if we did decide as a body to do it, how much would we need to appropriate? Do you think we'd have to appropriate all of it? Do you think, you know what I'm saying? Do you think that that would be possible to do that, some of that analysis, and then bring them, and I'm not committing to it either way, right? But I do think you've laid out pretty clearly that it's a necessary thing, and the implications of why it's been harmful to not have that position. So I would be willing as finance chair to hear the case in a more robust manner, and maybe we could get that on the agenda with maybe a little bit more math for the next board meeting. Does that seem like a good way forward on that? So we've got the Justice Task Force thing taken care of through we have to decide in a week, but theoretically we have that decided through ARPA. This is a bigger ask, right? Because it's, I agree, if we're going to do this, then we'd have to build it into the budget next year. So maybe like a more extensive memo on what that looks like financially, both for this year and going forward, that we can then as a body, but I don't want to waste time is what I want to get at. So maybe we could have it for the next board meeting in February, and that way we could decide yes or no, so that then you could plan accordingly based on that decision.
And that's fine. I'm happy to do whatever.
Okay.
You just said a bunch of things that I don't understand yet. So
Okay.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
But I do want to say that I have 3 open attorney positions
Right.
right now. I have an unused personnel line that totals about $150,000. So I can internally appropriate for that for the year if
Okay.
if this can be, done in a different.
That's exactly what I mean. So maybe working with Tammy on and giving us a memo, so I guess the question I would have for this year is, would we need to appropriate additional money in order to cover this position? And what would that look like? And I get that it's very early in the year to make that sort of projection. But I think especially given the housing people out of county, it does seem to me that this makes a lot of sense and that it's something we should act on. So if the 2 of you could work together to come up with a memo that's like, this is actually what we're asking, right? We're asking for this position, and this is the budget hit for 2023. And then maybe a line or 2 about 2024, but at this point, really looking at 2023.
One of the things that I want to get clarification on, in order to ensure future funding for this, we would also need a resolution that would add the position to the org chart in order to secure it, rather than waiting to the budget process. Liz is very in tune to what her budget is. She came to her first meeting with me and had salary calculations and everything. So I'm confident that, she can manage that and work it in terms of when she plans to hire, the vacant positions that she has. So yes, if she intends to hold those positions vacant for a certain portion of the year, then she probably won't need a budget amendment.
I think that's right.
Mr. Ingram.
That last bit kind of hit on a bit of what I was going to mention was during my time as recorder, there was a lot of unspent budget for personnel, and we did some creative things. And I'm glad you shouted out Ms. Ogden because she doesn't get enough of that and deserves it. And a lot of times we don't deserve all of her efforts. So thank you for that. I was going to say, too, with your executive assistant and the extra overtime and things like that as well, some of this money that we're talking about that isn't being spent currently on personnel, with the idea that you're focusing on a secretary position, is there also, similar to what the treasurer does, the ability to potentially hire people to maybe take some of that work that your executive assistant is doing, so that I would assume he or she probably does not want to put all those weekends in, but maybe some of that work that seems like it's pretty important if somebody's staying over the weekend to add that much overtime, maybe that could be something that could be handled potentially by somebody in a temporary fashion as well.
Very much so.
Okay. I mean, I really enjoyed some of the best work that I did during my time as recorder was fixing some personnel money issues and some of the pay scales based on some of this having some money to work with and things like that. And you're coming in a kind of a strange time with your budget's already set, but the fact that you aren't filling all of your staff positions right now does give you a little bit of wiggle room to maybe do something like that. So I just was thinking like, wow, that person maybe would like a weekend off, and maybe
I would like her to have a weekend
yeah,
off.
sounds like she deserves it. So I just in thinking about this secretary position as well, I was thinking maybe the ability to do the temp thing might be helpful for some of that kind of work too, to catch you up.
Dr. Furtado.
To Mike's point, like the memo I'm envisioning would be like bullet point 1, I think I could pay for it with existing appropriations this year because, or I think I could pay for this much of it, but I'm going to need $10,000 for this year because. Maybe a second bullet point would be based on the overtime that this person is currently working, if they continue to work it at this rate, it's going to cost us X. And, that's something maybe you'd want to consider about, you know what I mean? And it's a third of what it would cost to hire this person anyway. And then number 4, to Tammy's point, or number 3 bullet point would be, and if you decide this, you're deciding that for the future, and just know that in 2020, if I was fully staffed in 2027, it would cost in 2024. I'm envisioning this time when I'm not on the board anymore. 2024, understand that if you're voting yes on this for 2023, this is the implications for if I was fully staffed and I didn't have that leg, this would be what it would cost if the full weight of it came on the general fund, right? Like that's the kind of memo that I mean, like that sort of analysis. So
I
then
can do that.
Yeah, okay.
Ellie.
You mentioned you don't have a paralegal.
Correct.
I'm just wondering, so it sounds like your most urgent needs are the secretary, and then there are all these vacant attorney
Correct.
positions. Somebody else may have more history than I, but I think it's often hard to fill those attorney positions in this location. Have you considered hiring 2 paralegals instead of 1 attorney? Like it might be able to fill those paralegal positions more quickly.
So I have actually found it difficult to fill paralegal positions because we had one posted at the federal defender's office and I went through that search process. So I think it's hard to fill any position in the public defender's office. And part of that is because the rate of pay as compared to the private sector is significantly less. The work is significantly more, and you really have to have a fire in the gut to want to do this kind of work. Otherwise, you're not going to do it well, and you're probably not going to stay long. So I have a whole plan for the next budget process, which is going to involve asking for additional positions. Rather than a paralegal, I'd rather have a social worker. I need a mitigation specialist, somebody who can help manage the needs that are not strictly legal of our clients, not to mention gather information like medical records, school records, anything mitigating for sentencing purposes or trial, which we currently do not have. I also want another investigator, and I could use 3 more felony attorneys, but that's kind of a problem for future us. Right now, the main concern I have is the lack of communication with the clients, and that can be fixed with a secretary. So I'll see you in May, and then we'll go from there.
I have Jeff and then Mike for hands raised. Did you have something, Jeff?
No, I really appreciate this conversation. I think this is where we need to be and have these kind of conversations on the board. It's like incredibly important. And obviously, social justice is very important. And with a lot of people, if they're squandering in jail with no attorney attendance, that's really bad on us, frankly. And so I applaud you for taking the job.
Thank you.
And I applaud your workers for working the weekend, because you wouldn't work the weekend unless you had a mission behind it. So I appreciate the mission and purpose of your office. And I hope that we can do all that we can to support your office so that you can be successful and that we'd have the appropriate amount of justice in our county.
Thank you. It should not be that justice is bought and paid for. That's the whole purpose of having this system. And the fact that you can't pay doesn't mean that you should be treated any differently. I think everybody who comes through my office should feel as though they had a private attorney. And that's the level that we should be providing.
Mr. Ingram?
I just had an extra thought, and it was that I know we don't do our budgeting this way, but I wonder how much, with the deficiency in staffing that's been in that office, not just last year, but before that too, how much budgeted money we didn't spend on salaries. Like how much of that would have
Well, I just handed over a bunch of it to Judge Rosenbaum, so. You all just approved it.
Does anybody have any more questions or comments? Thank you so much.
Thank you guys all. I really appreciate being able to speak to you. I know some people have wanted to know what's going on in this office for a while. I plan on being available anytime you want me to come back and give an update. I'd be willing to do it. I think we need more outreach in general from this office. We're the 10th biggest county in the state. We should be a flagship. We should not be lagging behind. So I appreciate your support.
Would you mind sharing your email with us, please?
Sure. It's Pollock, POLLOCK, at co.champaign.il.us.
I spelled that right.
And you can call me as well.
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
Sure. EPOLLOCK at, and then it's the co.champaign.il.us.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Wow. Okay. That was a lot. That was really good. Item D, other business. I do not have anything. I do not have a chair's report tonight. And I do not have any items to be placed on the consent agenda at this time. Back to you, Kyle.
All right, we're at other business, and seeing no,
So just really fast, I wanted to just mention, in case you didn't see it in the newspaper, that Brad Yukin has taken a job in Wisconsin, and he has been chairing our broadband task force, and that's something that's ongoing, so that's probably something we need to think about a little bit, how we're going to do that. But he was really instrumental in that, and I just wanted to take a moment to thank Brad publicly for the work that he did on that. They went way above and beyond the call of duty. Everybody that's on that committee, when I threw out there, we should just have a committee on that. The amount of work that they did is way, way more than a typical board committee does, way, way more than a board committee with public does. And so I just wanted, as finance chair, to thank Brad, because that is the biggest thing we're doing with this ARPA money. And, if I had known that he was applying for a job in Wisconsin, I would have called and given him a bad recommendation and pretended I was some disgruntled farmer. But since I didn't know, it's too late. So thank you to Brad.
all right, anybody else? All right, seeing no other business, I call this meeting adjourned.